After battering South Korea with torrential rains and strong winds, Typhoon Hinamno spun quickly to Category 5 strength in the western Pacific Ocean.
The typhoon also waded into Russia's far eastern region, flooding roads and buildings and knocking off houses and some bridges. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
The Interagency Task Force against COVID-19 recommends to liberalize the face mask wearing policy of the government and making it optional to open spaces. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. concludes his two-country state visits in Indonesia and Singapore, bringing home business deals and job opportunities for Filipinos. The Philippines has formally requested Indonesia to grant executive clemency to Filipino death row convict Mary Jane Veloso. The death toll from a strong quake that hit southwestern China has risen to 76 as rescuers continue to scourge for survivors. And a fire tore through a karaoke bar in southern Vietnam, killing 12 people and leaving 11 injured.
Wearing of face masks in open spaces would be optional following recommendations from the Interagency Task Force on the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases to liberalize the country's mask-wearing policy. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has reportedly approved verbally the recommendation, but an executive order will be issued on the new policy. Vin Pascua has the details.
The Interagency Task Force on the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF, has recommended the liberalization of wearing face masks in open spaces. In IATF Resolution Number 1, Series of 2022, the IATF said that mask wearing outdoors would be optional in open spaces and not crowded with good ventilation. However, the IATF highly encourages senior citizens and immunocompromised individuals to continue wearing a face mask, being the most vulnerable to the virus infection. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles said this is not yet the policy, but the pilot testing on the optional use of face masks will be conducted towards the end of the year.
Ayon dun sa IATF, ang kanilang rekomendasyon ay sa pag-liberalize ng ating mask mandate, and make mask wearing outdoors voluntary across the country. Ang tuluyan na lifting ng mandatory mask mandate ay ipapilot towards the last quarter of 2022, provided na may improvement dun sa COVID-19 booster vaccination coverage.
Health Officer in Charge Maria Rosario Vergara said President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. verbally approved the IATF recommendation in a conversation with Interior and Local Government Secretary Ben-Hur Abalos. Under the resolution, Vergara said the President would issue an executive order for the liberalization of mask-wearing mandate across the country.
The very reason why we are having this press con and initially informing the public of this was because there was this verbal approval from the President when they talked with the Secretary Ben-Hur from the ILG. But it's stated in the IATF Resolution Number 1, Series of 2022, kung saan nakalagay that the IATF has resolved to recommend to the President and that there should be, or the President will issue an executive order regarding this policy.
Vergara said lifting of the mask mandate would be done in phases in selected areas in the country to ensure the public is still protected against COVID-19. Part of IATF resolution is a call for government agencies' help to implement policies and interventions to encourage the people to get booster shots. Based on the DOH National COVID-19 Vaccination Dashboard, only 18.1 million of the 72.6 million fully vaccinated Filipinos have received their booster shots. Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Health, or DOH, has admitted during the briefing of the House Committee on Health that the number of COVID-19 booster shots in the country remains low. Vic Somintak has the details.
The Philippines' COVID-19 booster dose accomplish is only at 21%. This figure was reported by the Department of Health in a briefing with the House Committee on Health. Dr. Althea de Guzman of the DOH vaccination program said the Philippines had already achieved more than 90% of the COVID-19 vaccinated adult population. However, she admitted that the number of the people who receive booster doses against COVID-19 is still few. Among the reasons why the Filipinos do not want to take booster shots are, first, 9 out of 10 Filipinos are confident with the protection from the primary series of COVID-19 vaccines. Second, they experience side effects on the first shot of their primary series. Third, they are afraid or worry about spending if ever there will be side effects from the booster dose. Fourth, the people feel that they don't need booster shots because it is a requirement at work or school. According to the DOH record, more than 72 million Filipino people are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or 92.3% of the target population. The DOH cleared that around 17 million of those who took the primary series of COVID-19 vaccines also received booster shots. Vic Somintak reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has announced that more jobs await Filipinos in Singapore. In his meeting with the Filipino community in Singapore, the president also expressed his gratitude for the Filipino workers' contribution to the country's economy. From Singapore, Eden Santos files this report.
Singapore needs thousands of Filipino health workers. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. made the announcement as he addressed Filipino workers gathered at the University Cultural Center in Singapore, where he is on his second leg of a two-country state visit. In a joint communique signed between the Philippines and Singapore, it stated the city-state's intention to accept Filipino workers in the health sector. Migrant Workers Secretary Susan Toots Oples said the Singapore government vowed to ensure the welfare of Filipino health workers to be employed by their country.
Ang good news po, mismong gobyerno ng Singapore ang nag-reach out sa atin. Andito yung ambassador ng Singapore sa Pilipinas. At humihingi po sila ng karagdagan ng mga Filipino health workers dahil sobrang napabilib po sila ng ating mga manggagawa nung panahon ng pandemya.
In addressing the OFWs, the president said that Singapore would also give opportunities to employ in the aviation service like engineers and other jobs. Marcos emphasized that until the day that work in the Philippines is complete, OFWs still have the opportunity to show their talent, skills, diligence, and kindness in other countries, especially in Singapore.
Tingin sa inyo ng inyong mga kasama na Singaporean dito sa Singapore. At nung tinanong ko, ano talaga naman ang magiging epekto nito? Ay, naku, libo-libo ang hinahanap ng Singapore. Libo-libo, hindi lang nurse, kundi pati na yung mga aviation services, pati mga engineer, pati mga profesor, lahat na po. At siguro, hanggat na dumating ang araw na kompleto na ang trabaho sa Pilipinas, ay meron pa tayong pagkakataon na ipakita ang galing, ang husay, ang sipag, ang bait ng ating mga overseas workers. Kaya naman po, dadami ang mga kasamahan ninyo sa potluck. Kaya naman po, sinisikap ko na maibangon muli ang ating bansa sa kabila ng dagok na naidulot ng pandemya.
Just like in Indonesia, the chief executive thanked the OFWs in Singapore for their huge contributions to the country's economy through their remittances.
Nung nakaraang taon, ang Singapore ang pumangalawa sa pinakamataas na naipasok ng remittance na umabot ng 2.2 billion US dollars. Hindi po biro yan. At pag tinitignan po natin ang ekonomiya, ang laking bahagi dun sa ating ekonomiya ay nabubuhay at hindi pa tayo nalulubog dahil sa trabaho, sa sakripisyo ng ating mga OFW.
In exchange for the sacrifices and love of the country by the OFWs, President Marcos promised to promote their welfare and protection, as well as their families in the Philippines through scholarships, healthcare programs, and other services. From Singapore, Eden Santos reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is set to arrive tonight in the country from his 4-day two-country state visits in Indonesia and Singapore. The president has brought with him business deals and job opportunities for Filipinos, apart from strengthening the country's bilateral relations with the two neighbors. In Singapore, 6 agreements were signed between the country and the city-state that include a memorandum of understanding on counter-terrorism, digital cooperation, basis conversion, data privacy and water collaboration, as well as the joint communique for overseas Filipino workers. The president made a separate courtesy call with Singaporean President Halima Yacob and Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. Marcos also attended the first international briefing of his economic team, attended by international business and finance communities, where he assured the country's steady path to recovery from the pandemic and the robust economic expansion. From his Indonesia trip, Marcos will bring home an $8.484 billion worth of MOU and letters of intent signed during the Jakarta Business Roundtable meeting with Indonesian businessmen that include investments in textiles, garments, renewable energy, satellite gateway, wire global technology, and agri-foods.
The Department of Foreign Affairs has formally communicated with Indonesia the country's request for an executive clemency to Filipino death row convict Mary Jane Veloso. In a media briefing, Press Secretary Trixie Angeles said that Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo communicated the request to his Indonesian counterpart last September 4. The communication was made on the sidelights of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s 3-day state visit to Indonesia. There are no details yet if the president was able to raise the issue to Indonesian President Joko Widodo during their meetings. Angeles said Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi said he would refer with Indonesia's Justice Ministry.
There's no decision yet that's made. In fact, the foreign minister said that isasangguni nila ito sa kanilang Ministry of Justice. So sa ngayon, there's nothing final, pero tinutuloy-tuloy pa rin natin yung paghahanap ng solusyon.
Veloso was arrested in Yogyakarta in April of 2010 after authorities found 2.6 kilograms of heroin sewn into the lining of her luggage. She was convicted of drug trafficking and convicted to death in 2015.
The powerful Commission on Appointments has confirmed the nominations of 2 of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s appointees. The CA confirmed George Garcia as chairman of the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, and Carlo Alexi Nograles as chairman of the Civil Service Commission, or CSC. Prior to the approval of his nomination, Garcia answered queries on issues concerning the poll body, in particular concerns on defective vote counting machines or VCMs and issues on double registrants. However, the CA members commended Garcia for his role in the conduct of the historic May 2022 elections, considered as the most peaceful election in the country. Garcia will have a term of office until February 2, 2029. Unlike Garcia, Nograles' appointment passed the CA without further questioning. Nograles served as a representative of Davao City, was chairman of the House Committee on Appropriations, and a spokesman for the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF, during the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte. Duterte had earlier appointed Nograles for the same position in CSC, but the CA deferred his confirmation as a courtesy to the incoming Marquez administration.
The tropical cyclone seen outside the Philippine Area of Responsibility, or PAR, has been upgraded to a tropical storm. In the 4 p.m. bulletin issued by the State Weather Bureau Pag-asa, it is located 1,430 kilometers east of northern Luzon. It is packed with maximum sustained winds of 65 kilometers per hour near the center and gustiness of up to 80 kilometers per hour. As of now, it is moving southwest at 25 kilometers per hour with strong winds extending outwards up to 310 kilometers from the center. The tropical storm is expected to enter PAR, then will turn northwest tonight or tomorrow early morning.
Up next, China earthquake death toll rises to 74. 12 dead, 11 injured in Vietnam karaoke bar fire. And President Vladimir Putin says it is impossible to isolate Russia and slams sanctions fever. All these stories and more when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Add to cart 5. Ating ka din na. Wait lang ma, minsan lang kasi itong sale ma. Minsan? Buwan-buwan inaabangan mo yung 1-1, 2-2.
Hi, Miss Jane.
Sa'yo lahat yan.
Kalahati pa lang po yun, ma'am. May paparating ba po tayo mamaya?
Ha! Darling, mai-consider bang addiction yung mga ganap ni Jane? Paano OA naman yung term addiction?
Never get used to that, yung sumasalubong ako ng casket at makikita mo na lang siya, pangalan na lang.
OWA Administrator Arnel Ignacio sasagutin ang mga mainit na issue na kinakaharap ng OFWs. Punto por punto, sasagutin.
I think we should slowly veer away from the narrative na lagi itong tungkol sa kawawa.
Kasama si Attorney Sal Panelo dito sa Counterpoint. Miyerkules, alas 10:30 ng gabi, dito lang sa Net 25.
Alam ko marami nakakalkal sa akin pero hindi ko akalain ito kakalkalin niyo.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. The death toll from a strong earthquake that struck southwest China has risen to 74, according to state media today, as thousands were evacuated into temporary shelters and heavy rains threatened to cause more landslides. The state-run People's Daily said 34 people died in Sichuan's Yan City, while 40 deaths were reported in neighboring Ganzi Prefecture. Moreover, more than 21,000 people have been evacuated from areas prone to landslides or building collapse after at least 13 aftershocks of magnitude 3.0 and above have been detected as of 7 a.m. on Tuesday. Rescuers are still in search for the survivors of the earthquake, with dozens of people believed stranded or missing. The provincial grid operator said power had been restored to over 22,000 households and that 12 emergency shelters in Yan were connected to a temporary power supply after the quake knocked out electricity across swathes of the countryside. Meanwhile, the China Meteorological Administration warned that quake-stricken areas would experience significant rainfall until Thursday and that landslides could hamper rescue work.
A fire tore through a karaoke bar in southern Vietnam, killing 12 people and leaving 11 injured, a local official said. State media reported that the blaze engulfed the second and third floors of the building, trapping customers and staff members as dense smoke filled the staircase and blocked the emergency exit. Many crowded onto a balcony to escape the flames, which grew quickly as they caught the wooden interior, and others were forced to jump from the building, the reports added. Photos showed plumes of smoke billowing out of the bar, located in a crowded residential neighborhood in Tuan An City, as firefighters on cranes tried to extinguish the fire. Nguyen Tan Tam, a top official, said that rescue teams are still looking for victims at the scene. He also said that the cause of the fire has not been determined and is being investigated. The fire was Vietnam's deadliest since 2018, when 13 people died in a blaze in an apartment complex in Ho Chi Minh City. Due to this tragic event, the Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh on Wednesday ordered a further inspection of high-risk venues, especially karaoke bars.
16 people suffered injuries when a high-rise spinning joyride broke down and fell at the Dussehra fairground in Mohali, India. The shocking footage shows the circular seating section on a standing pole of the spinning swing hurtled to the ground with a huge impact that tossed people violently into the air. The injured people were immediately taken to the Phase 6 hospital for treatment. The police are now investigating the brutal crash landing.
For most of 2022, the world's ocean basins have been relatively peaceful and free of tropical cyclones. But this week, Typhoon Hinamno shattered the calm waters and swung quickly to Category 5 strength in the western Pacific Ocean. Just hours ago, the typhoon waded into Russia's far eastern Primorye region, flooding roads and buildings. It stormed houses and knocked off some bridges. According to some weather experts, Hinamno's overwhelming wind speed makes it the most dangerous storm of the year. Hinamno's erratic path also caused death or injuries, blackouts, landslides, evacuations, and damage to property in Japan, South Korea, and Philippines and Taiwan.
President Vladimir Putin said it was impossible to isolate Russia as the country faces unprecedented Western sanctions over its military operations in Ukraine. In an Eastern Economic Forum in Russia's Pacific port city of Vladivostok, Putin said no matter how much someone would like to isolate Russia, it is impossible to do this.
Однако на смену эпидемии пришли иные вызовы, также глобального характера, несущие угрозу для всего мира. Имею в виду санкционную лихорадку Запада, его неприкрытые агрессивные попытки навязать другим странам модели поведения, лишить их суверенитета и подчинить своей воле.
Putin pointed out that sanctions against Moscow are threatening the world, the latest of which are the gas embargo of the G7 and EU suspension of the Russian visa deal. As Russia faces growing isolation and deteriorating ties with the West, Putin said Moscow is seeking to pivot to the country towards the Middle East and Africa. He also hailed the growing role of the Asia-Pacific region in global affairs and vowed to strengthen partnerships in Asia in the face of Western sanctions. Putin said that adding partnerships in the Asian region will create colossal new opportunities for the Russian people.
New British Prime Minister Liz Truss addressed the nation from Downing Street after a heavy downpour in central London and vowed to ride out the storm of the economic crisis. Truss vowed action this week to tackle unaffordable energy bills caused by Russia's appalling war in Ukraine and listed 3 priorities in office: the economy, energy, and healthcare.
We shouldn't be daunted by the challenges we face. As strong as the storm may be, I know that the British people are stronger. Our country was built by people who get things done. We have huge reserves of talent, of energy and determination. I am confident that together we can ride out the storm. We can rebuild our economy and we can become the modern, brilliant Britain that I know we can be.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz voiced confidence that Germany was well prepared to survive the winter despite turmoil in the energy markets in the wake of Russia's conflict with Ukraine. Scholz said Germany will keep moving at great speed to shed the reliance in the wake of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. We've spoken with our friends on the West European coast, with the Netherlands and Belgium, for them to expand liquefied natural gas terminals and pipeline capacities with France, which will for the first time deliver gas to us. Scholz said that to the Parliament. Europe's biggest economy has also restarted mothballed coal power plants and this week decided to keep 2 nuclear power plants on standby through mid-April instead of completely ending the usage of atomic energy by the end of the year.
Less than a month before a general election, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan affirms his commitment to peace and stability in Bosnia and to the territorial integrity of a country facing a serious political crisis. Erdogan mentions the importance Turkey attaches to the peace, prosperity, and stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He says an intense political agenda awaits Bosnia and Herzegovina and that it is important to the whole region that the elections be held in a fair and constructive environment. Şefik Zaferovic, a Muslim member of the Bosnian presidency, says the Republic of Turkey and President Erdogan have a balanced policy towards Bosnia. He says Erdogan has good relations with the people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, regardless of which the peoples of Bosnia and Herzegovina they belong to or which part of the country they come from. He says that it is very important for the stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Up next, Hong Kong reports its first case of monkeypox case. CDC recommends first updated COVID-19 booster. And retired NYPD officer sentenced to 10 years in prison for capital breach. Keep tuning in to Mata ng Agila International. We will be right back.
Isa ka ba sa nagulat sa mga gastos sa biglaang pagkakasakit o pagpanaw ng isang mahal sa buhay. Nakarinig ka na rin ba ng mga kwento na kahit masakit mawalan ng mahal sa buhay o magkaroon ng may malubhang sakit, kinaya pa rin nila na pinagdaanan dahil may insurance na sumagot ng gastos? Perhaps many of us are also planning for insurance to have funds available for emergency situations and even death and critical illnesses. Pero paano nga ba ang pag-invest sa pamamagitan ng insurance? We'll find out from our special guest, Mr. Harold De Leon, First Vice President of Security Bank Corporation.
This pandemic has really taught us the value of insurance, and I strongly encourage you to get protected. Do it now, mahirap ipagpabukas ito.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
This portion is brought to you by Source Alliance.
And we now welcome you back with more global news. Hong Kong reported its first monkeypox case, diagnosed in a 30-year-old man who reported symptoms while in hotel quarantine after flying into the city, the health department said. The patient, who visited a number of countries including Canada, US, and the Philippines before going to Hong Kong on September 5, was reported feeling unwell while in quarantine. According to Edwin Sui, controller for the Center for Health Protection, there is an extremely low risk that anyone in the city contracted monkeypox, since prolonged exposure is needed to transmit the virus. As of now, no close contacts in Hong Kong have been identified, but the city will raise its alert level for monkeypox and notify officials in mainland China and the World Health Organization about the situation. The government is finalizing negotiations with a vaccine manufacturer for the shipment of the monkeypox vaccine within this month, and has also reserved facilities for quarantine of close contacts of confirmed monkeypox cases. The agency said close contacts will be quarantined for 21 days to prevent transmission.
In the United States, 2 new COVID-19 booster shots have been endorsed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Rosel Feria has the details.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, recommends use of the updated COVID-19 boosters from 2 vaccine manufacturers. The health agency recommends the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 booster for people ages 12 years and older, and the Moderna COVID-19 booster for people ages 18 years and older. These updated COVID-19 boosters add Omicron BA4 and BA5 spike protein components to the current vaccine composition. CDC says these help restore protection that has waned since previous vaccination. They target variants that are more transmissible and immune-evading. In the coming weeks, CDC also expects to recommend updated COVID-19 boosters for other pediatric groups. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle P. Walensky says if you are eligible, there is no bad time to get your COVID-19 booster. Rosel Feria, Washington, D.C., Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
During a press conference in Geneva, UNICEF Somalia representative warns that around 730 children are reported to have died in nutrition centers across the country.
Around 730 children are reported to have died in nutrition sites across the country. And to put it into perspective, this is less than 1% of the children who were admitted and cured and discharged. Malnutrition has reached unprecedented level. We have 1.5 million children. This is nearly half of the children under 5 are likely to have acute malnutrition, and of them, 385,000 will need treatment for severe acute malnutrition.
Wafa Saeed says the emergency water supply is not enough for millions of people in Somalia who need it.
Because of the drought, many water sources have dried up. Many wells have also dried up because of overuse. And we have around 4.5 million people who need emergency water supply.
The United Nations has earlier warned that Somalia was on the brink of famine for the second time in just over a decade. The UN says time is running out to save lives in the drought-stricken country, where around 1 million have fled their homes on a desperate quest for food and water.
A former law enforcement officer of New York has been convicted of several felonies related to the July 6 U.S. Capitol breach. Crisan Fragato tells us more.
56-year-old Thomas Webster, a retired New York Police Department officer, has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for assaulting a law enforcement officer with a deadly or dangerous weapon during the breach of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Webster of the Village of Florida, New York, was sentenced here in the District of Columbia. His and others' actions disrupted a joint session of the U.S. Congress convened to ascertain and count the electoral votes related to the presidential election. Webster was arrested on February 21, 2021, and was found guilty by a jury on May 2, 2022, of 5 felonies: assaulting, resisting, or impeding officers with a dangerous weapon, obstructing officers during a civil disorder, entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds while carrying a dangerous weapon, engaging in disorderly or disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds while carrying a dangerous weapon, and engaging in physical violence in a restricted building or grounds while carrying a dangerous weapon. He was also found guilty of 1 misdemeanor, engaging in an act of physical violence in the Capitol building or grounds. Following his prison term, Webster will be placed on 3 years of supervised release. He must also pay $2,060 in restitution. Since January 6, 2021, more than 860 individuals have been arrested in nearly all 50 states for crimes related to the breach of the U.S. Capitol. This includes over 260 individuals charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement. The investigation remains ongoing. Crisan Fragato, Washington, D.C., Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Syria, 24 kilograms of Captagon that have been crushed and reconstituted to look like hummus bowls have been seized. Syrian authorities say the amphetamine is produced in pill form, but the smugglers had crushed it and used the resulting paste to mold pottery-like dishes coated with a brown adhesive. One man has been arrested in Damascus in connection with a thwarted trafficking attempt. The country's interior ministry makes no mention of where the shipment of fake hummus bowls was bound for. Captagon traffickers have concealed the drug in fake oranges, real hollowed out pomegranates, and pitted olives. Most of the global Captagon production originates in Syria, spurring a multi-billion-dollar industry that has made the drug the country's largest export by far. Saudi Arabia is the largest market for Captagon, a versatile drug popular among the partying elite, but also used for weight loss and by students working several jobs. Around 250 million Captagon pills were seized worldwide in the first 8 months of 2022.
The White House applauds Kenya for its peaceful presidential election after the country's Supreme Court upheld William Ruto's victory in last month's vote. White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre says U.S. President Joe Biden's administration wants to congratulate the people of Kenya on the conclusion of a peaceful electoral process.
On Kenya, I'll say this. We congratulate William Ruto on his election as president of Kenya. We also congratulate the people of Kenya on the conclusion of a peaceful electoral process. We commend Raila Odinga and other candidates for abiding by the Supreme Court filing, transparent electoral processes, and the peaceful adjudication of disputes are testaments to the strength of democratic institutions.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets with Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina as part of the latter's visit to India. Modi says Bangladesh is India's largest development partner and largest trade partner in the region. He added that cooperation against terrorism and radicalism is very important in the fight against forces that want to attack the two countries' mutual trust. Hasina mentions other issues discussed in the meeting.
We discussed a wide range of bilateral issues to take forward our relationship in the days ahead. We focused on possible ways to materialize our commitment and accommodate each other's priorities in a mutually beneficial manner. Connectivity, trade and commerce, investment, water resources management, security, border management, and lines of credit are some of the areas we discussed.
The United Nations said it was helping connect Palestinian children in the blockaded Gaza Strip to the outside world by distributing tablets to hundreds of pupils. Children make up nearly half of Gaza's population of 2.3 million. Most of them have never been able to leave the coastal territory, which is ruled by the Islamist movement Hamas. Some 890 tablets are being handed out this week at schools run by the UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, following a pilot that saw a few dozen devices given to children last year. Thomas White, the agency's Gaza director, said they are very conscious that children are going to have to be able to engage with an increasingly digitalized world as they grow. The project could help young Gazans go into coding, providing back office IT support for companies or customer support online, according to White.
More frequent and intense heat waves and wildfires driven by climate change are expected to worsen the quality of the air we breathe, harming human health and ecosystems, the UN warned. A new report from the UN's World Meteorological Organization cautioned that the interaction between pollution and climate change would impact hundreds of millions of people over the coming century and urged action to rein in the harm.
In a high emission scenario, and if temperatures continue to rise, there will be something called a climate penalty, which is an increase in ozone episodes with the accompanying degradation in air quality will come as a result of just the increase in temperatures and the frequency of heat waves that will be solely due to climate change.
The WMO's annual Air Quality and Climate Bulletin examined the impacts of large wildfires across Siberia and Western North America in 2021, finding that they produced widespread increases in health hazards, with concentrations in eastern Siberia reaching levels not observed before. Tiny particles with a diameter of less than 2.5 micrometers are considered particularly harmful since they can penetrate deep into the lungs or cardiovascular system. In addition to human health impacts, this will also affect ecosystems as air pollutants settle from the atmosphere to Earth's surface.
Coming right up, the Philippine Peso hits a new all-time low. The Blue Boys from the Philippines qualify for the 2022 World Cup. And late actor Chadwick Boseman wins posthumous Emmy. Catch all these news when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka nang mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad, at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang angking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
We now bring you the latest in business, sports, and entertainment here on Mata ng Agila International. It's the fourth straight day with a new all-time weakest position for the Philippine peso, which closed at 57 pesos and 135 centavos to $1. During the intraday trading, the local currency went as weak as $57.33 to $1. According to some analysts, the new record low set by the peso is due to the global impact of the US dollar.
The dollar surged against other major currencies and equities sank after a forecast-beating U.S. economic report gave new life to talk of a third straight blockbuster interest rate hike next month. The services sector data show the world's top economy remained resilient in the face of surging prices and borrowing costs, highlighting the job the Federal Reserve has in taming inflation while trying to prevent a recession, a goal many observers doubt can be achieved. The reading added to the gloom blanketing trading floors as investors face a range of headwinds, including a worsening energy crisis in Europe, Russia's conflict with Ukraine, and Chinese economic woes caused by COVID-19 lockdowns. Meanwhile, the yen's losses continue to mount despite comments from government officials hinting at a possible intervention to provide support. As for the euro, it remains lodged below parity with the dollar and at a 20-year low, even as the European Central Bank prepares to ramp up interest rates.
Great news as the Philippine Blue Boys qualified for the WBSC Men's Softball World Cup after reaching the final of the 11th Men's Softball Asian Cup being held in Kochi, Japan. The team won over India on a score of 8-1 to merit a finals match against Japan. Though the Japanese pounced on the Blue Boys, still it was a successful campaign for the newly formed Philippine team. Their match for the Men's Softball World Cup is from November 26 to December 4 in Auckland.
Great news as the Philippine Blue Boys qualified for the WBSC Men's Softball World Cup after reaching the final of the 11th Men's Softball Asian Cup being held in Kochi, Japan. The team won over India on a score of 8-1 to merit a finals match against Japan. Though the Japanese pounced on the Blue Boys, still it was a successful campaign for the newly formed Philippine team. Their match for the Men's Softball World Cup is from November 26 to December 4 in Auckland.
Chadwick Boseman has won a posthumous Emmy Award for his final performance as T'Challa. During this weekend's Creative Arts Emmys ceremony, the Black Panther actor won the award for Outstanding Character Voice-Over Performance for his role in Marvel's animated What If series. Boseman's wife, Taylor Simone Ledward, was at the ceremony to accept the Emmy, telling the audience, "Chad would be so honored, and I'm so honored on his behalf." Boseman died in August of 2020 of colon cancer at age 43. And before his death, he reprised his Black Panther role for What If, voicing an alternate universe version of T'Challa.
There are no Russian films among those selected for the Venice Film Festival. Director Alberto Barbera attributes the absence of Russian films among those selected for this year's Mostra to the few entries and to the modest quality of the submissions, and not because Russian artists boycotted the festival. Barbera also mentions the decision taken by the Biennial Foundation to not accept films funded by the Russian Ministry of Culture. The festival director also says the future of cinema is unpredictable since powerful streaming platforms are here to stay. Barbera says the film industry is in a period of transition and is looking for a new market balance between the traditional system and the new system of streamers. He says he is convinced that cinemas will remain, although with smaller and limited numbers, but of better quality nonetheless.
An Indian mother fought off a tiger with her bare hands to save her toddler from its jaws, according to an official. Archana Chudari stepped out of her house in the central state of Madhya Pradesh as the 15-month-old boy wanted to relieve himself. According to local official Sanjeev Shrivastava, the tiger has strayed from the nearby Bhavnavar Tiger Reserve, which pounced on the child. The tiger attacked and tried to sink its teeth into the child's head, but the mother leapt to the rescue. The tiger was unsuccessful to snatch the boy, so it slunk away into the forest. The mother suffered punctured lungs and wounds to her abdomen, while the toddler had deep gashes on his head. Both were rushed to the hospital. Officials said a search operation was underway to push the tiger back to its territory, and villagers were told to stay indoors at night.
Spain visit will not be complete without trying its sumptuous cuisine. Our correspondent Catherine Messina visited a local restaurant to give us a taste of one of its famous snacks, the empanada. Let's watch this.
I have travelled from London, United Kingdom, all the way here, Madrid, Spain, to explore some of the exciting food spots and Spanish cuisines, one of which is here at Morphy to try their famous empanadas. Here's my review of just a few. First is the picante or the spicy empanada. It has meat, onion, red and green peppers, olives and chili. It has a very generous filling and beautiful combinations of flavours, but it's not as spicy as I thought, so it's a 4 out of 5. Next, we have the caprese, which is an Italian twist to the empanada. It has dried tomatoes, mozzarella and basil. It's a very classic mix, and look at that cool cheese pull. It's so delicious, I give this a 5 out of 5. Then, we have the pollo or the chicken empanada. It has chicken, onion, red pepper, tomato and egg. It's very filling, but there's no sign of the egg and not enough of the onion, peppers and tomatoes. It's still very tasty, but I still give this a 3.5 out of 5. For those with a sweet tooth, here are 2 desserts that you should definitely try. First is the bananas, Deutsche de Leche and chocolate empanada. It is so delicious and warm that the sweetness is balanced out by the pastry, so it's not overpowering, but is suitable for those who are not into the treats that are really sweet. I give this a 5 out of 5. Finally, we have the Nutella Dolce de Leche pastry, which is Nutella and caramelized milk. For the Nutella fans out there, It will surely satisfy your sweet cravings and is a must-try when you go to Morphe and if you want to have a comforting bite. I give this a 5 out of 5. I hope that you can also try these amazing foods. This is Catherine Messina, London Bureau, reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Here's a look back on what happened today in history, September 7. In 1533, Elizabeth I was born. She was the Queen of England and Ireland from November of 1558 until her death in 1603. Elizabeth was the daughter of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, his second wife, who was executed when Elizabeth was 2 years old. In 1977, U.S. President Jimmy Carter and General Omar Torrijos of Panama signed the Panama Canal Treaties, guaranteeing Panama control of the Panama Canal after 1999. And in 2021, El Salvador became the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, kicking off a big and bold experiment for the popular cryptocurrency.
We are now halfway through the week, and now here is a quote from Roy T. Bennett, an American author. Instead of worrying about what you cannot control, shift your energy to what you can create.
You know, at the end of the day, it's always a matter of where you put your energy, your focus, your time. After all, these are things that when you lose, you can never get back.
That's true. Time is very important, so focus your energy on what is good for you. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. And on behalf of Matanang Agila International, we would like to greet a happy 13th year of victorious, compassionate, and dynamic leadership to Iglesia Ni Cristo Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. I am CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Matanang Agila International. Stay tuned for Attorney Sal Panelo's Counterpoint with tonight's guest, OWA Administrator Arnel Ignacio. We are here to say good night on Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.